Hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Worth It Then, Worth It Now, this sort of side segment I run on this channel where I look at games from yesteryear. They're not necessarily contemporary, but generally speaking they're games that I think are worth shouting out of season. This is a little bit different today. We're looking at Dead in Bermuda, which at the time of recording this video is free to keep on Steam for the next couple of days. So you should head over there and redeem it. I mean, it's not like it's going to break the bank. I think it goes for $2 on sale or something like that. But yeah, you can pick it up, you can check it out for free. And the main reason that I did that, because I hadn't played this until today, was because I'm actually familiar with this series and with the pedigree of this developer, who is Ishtar Games. Now, they're probably more well known for their more recent release, which was The Last Spell, which personally I have a few issues with some of the pacing. I think it's a little bit of a bloated game, but generally speaking, it's probably their biggest success and what they're most known for. Pretty cool, holding off infinite waves of zombies protecting a town, kind of a long-form roguelite with a lot of RPG in there. They really do like their sort of spreadsheet, stat-crunching RPG stuff, and that was first manifested in this Dead In series. So Dead in Bermuda was the first one, which we'll talk about in a minute, but it was followed by Dead in Vinland as a sequel, and that one I'm much more familiar with, and it has a different theme. It's like Vikings trapped on an island. They have to escape into a new life, but it's still the same trappings, the same setup. In Dead in Bermuda, it's a plane crash on an island, but the point is that you have a bunch of people thrown together trying to scavenge and survive essentially on an island in a bit of a life or death situation. It's also worth pointing out that their next one is Dead in Antares, and I believe that's due to come out sometime this year, which is probably why, you know, going full circle, this game's going for free to keep as we speak. Bit of a soft marketing campaign. So there's your setup, there's your background. I hadn't played this until today. I think it's still very, very good, but I was already a fan of Dead in Vinland, which is the sequel that builds upon this game. Okay, so what is Dead in Bermuda? Well, as I alluded to, there's a plane crash with a bunch of characters. I think you have 8, actually. I have to have a bit of a think about it. Anyway, yeah, it's not like it's a random cast of characters. I don't believe so. It is set. However, there is a lot of procedural random components to exploring the island and how things play out and how characters interact with each other, if they have fights and arguments and little sort of audio lines, but that keeps it fresh, because while I've only just played the opening hours of the game, it's one of those games that it's sort of designed to be brutal and hardcore, and as you learn, you're gonna rinse and repeat and restart. But ultimately, yeah, you have these 8 different people, you have this little island base camp area which you can scroll left and right of field, and there are a couple of, you could probably call them workstations, action stations. The game plays out in a turn-based manner, and all you really have to do functionally is just slot dudes to a station and press go. Next turn, whatever. There's 2 day turns and there's a night turn, and in the early going it's things like scavenge the crashed plane, a bit of a beginner leg up, doing research and crafting new stations, right? Because you only have a few things to choose from, exploring the island, that sort of thing. So yeah, you're sort of trying to find your feet, push the narrative forward to try and hit end state with the exploring and building out new stations. You know, I've built out things like an area for people to have a nap, but also some other stuff like scavenging stations so I can chop wood and search for other things throughout the island. And so each character has a stat sheet. They have kind of, it's not necessarily primary and secondary skills. Think of it more as they have needs that need to be fulfilled. I think there's 5. You got like depression, fatigue, sickness, injury, and hunger. I think that's it. And if any of those fill to 100%, the character will die. So you're sort of doing those survival mechanics to juggle those things. You know, I talked about napping before, but things like feeding people and bandaging them up when they're injured is important also. But then they have a secondary sheet, which is all of the different stats that get invoked, and they sit in subcategories, and you can see the beginning of this. Again, more familiar with Dead in Vinland. There's some more synergy and sort of like subsection bonuses, skills within skills, that sort of stuff. But this is still complex, albeit a little bit more tech demo, proof of concept. So you have things that range from stealth to fishing to crafting to even combat, and you have to figure out, are you going to try and invest in the long run and get guys better at things that they're not very good at, or are you just going to lean into their specific skill set that they already have a default position? Because you have different people from different walks of life, and they're all kind of caricatures in a way. You've got a crunchy, crusty old man that's watched too many National Geographic shows and he's been waiting all his life for this, and you've got a young female doctor that's very prickly about any sort of man criticizing her. But look, it creates a dynamic. That's the point of it. You're not really here for subtle, because when they do gather around the campfire at nighttime and have a bit of banter and interact with each other, it pretty much just lays the heavy duty topics on the table for a couple of paragraphs and then off you go. It's good. It adds a dynamism to it. The characters in turn become characters with at least more than one dimension. What's her name? Alice is like sort of the mum of the group, a bit of a busybody, sticking her nose in, probing everyone for questions, but in a way, she acts as narrative impetus for the character. At nighttime, everyone gathers around and you divvy up food, and food in turn can be perishable and degrade in quality. So, maybe a really good meal could within a band, say, cover 20 to 30% hunger for a character. Maybe you want to risk it and say, no, we'll hold off. We won't use that food. There's a chance that overnight it actually degrades and gets worse, but maybe it won't, right? And we can sort of hold on to it. It's not like you've got a fridge or anything like that. So there's a strategic layer to how you feed your dudes, and I think, honestly, I might have misjudged it. At the moment, I'm not really in too much trouble, but I think I've pretty much run out of food and everyone's starting to get hungry. So yeah, look, it's tough while you figure out the ropes. Exploring the island is essentially just filling up a bar and explore random grids and interact with different events and try and figure out what's going on. But yeah, look, all in all, it's a solid game. It's 10 years old now, which is pretty wild, but it's a really good example of what I kind of preach, which is to say, take an appropriate bite of the pie. This is a game with complexity to it, in that number crunching, or at least being spreadsheet driven. You don't have to crunch too hard, but it's all laid out on the table. The moving parts that are normally behind the curtain are there, and you can really see what people's skills are doing and what's leveling up and that sort of thing. But it's still very playable and graspable. It's just it's more of a see-through PC case, and it lets you see the inner workings and the complexities of some of those RPG mechanics. But it sticks the landing. It works really well, and I was expecting, honestly, maybe a bit more of a simpler version, being that I'm familiar with Dead in Vinland, but it would seem they had the concept well and truly locked down in this game. So there's nothing wrong with it, and I think it's the perfect palate cleanser to pick up right now. I know on this channel I've covered a lot of more high profile stuff, things like Ubisoft releases, things like that. I mean, I've got a soft spot, what can I say? But yeah, I would really suggest you at least pick this up and check it out while it's free. And maybe you're watching this video down the track and it's going for a couple of dollars. It's worth the gamble. It's probably outside of your wheelhouse, but at the very least you can appreciate that it is solidly executed for what is ultimately a very original concept for a game. Anyway, team, might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.